Even as a programmer, I'm shocked how much code directs me. It's a strange thing when you really stop and think about it, about how much of our everyday lives today feels quietly shaped, nudged, or even dictated by algorithms. I often catch myself scrolling through my phone, watching a video or reading an article, and there's that little voice in my head, the one that knows how these things are built, whispering, "This isn't random. This was put here for you." The videos that autoplay, the recommendations that seem eerily accurate, sometimes unsettlingly so, or the news stories that fill your feed, all of it is filtered and presented by lines of code working silently behind the screen. And the irony, believe me, is not lost on me. I spend my days, sometimes late into the night, writing code. I instruct machines, building the very systems that then, in their own subtle ways, seem to instruct me. It's a peculiar kind of feedback loop. For years, I've pored over syntax and logic, giving computers commands, telling them precisely what to do. But out here, in my personal life, it feels like those same machine logics have started telling me what to pay attention to, how to communicate, even how I measure what's important or successful. Take, for instance, the sheer volume of information. Back when I was a kid, if you wanted to know something, you went to the library, or you bought a newspaper, or you watched a specific news program. There was an active choice involved. Now, information cascades over us, curated before it even reaches our eyes. My son, just the other day, was explaining some new slang he'd picked up from a gaming video. It wasn't a word I'd ever heard, and it struck me how quickly these linguistic shifts happen now, how rapidly something goes from niche to ubiquitous, propelled by the sheer velocity of content sharing and algorithmic amplification. It makes you wonder how much of our shared language is now an output of what these systems deem engaging. I see it at work too, not just in external social media feeds, but even in how internal communications are structured, or how certain projects get visibility. We build tools to optimize, to make things efficient, but often the optimization criteria subtly shift our behavior. You find yourself crafting emails or presentations not just for your human audience, but also for the unblinking, unseen eye of the corporate algorithm that might decide who sees it or how it's prioritized. It's like we built these incredibly powerful systems with the best of intentions, to connect us, to inform us, to make our lives easier, only to discover that we've started bending ourselves around their invisible rules. Our attention spans, our choice of words, even our daily routines become subtly modified by what these systems reward or amplify. It's a quiet phenomenon, really. It doesn't scream for your attention like a new piece of legislation or a major news event. It just is. It's the way your smart speaker suggests a new song you've never heard, which you then find yourself humming later. It's the way a quick search for a new coffee machine leads to weeks of targeted ads across every platform you visit. It's not malicious, not typically, but it creates a pervasive sense of being in a stream, rather than standing on the bank, deciding where to cast your line. And as someone who understands the wires and circuits behind it all, that feeling is even more pronounced, a constant, low-level hum of awareness that my digital environment is not merely a passive mirror, but an active sculptor of my reality, and perhaps even my language. This shaping isn't just about what products I might buy or what political views I encounter. It penetrates deeper, influencing the very words I use, the thoughts I form, and the way I articulate them. It truly is a strange thing to witness, let alone be a part of creating. It raises questions about our agency, our authenticity, and what it truly means to communicate in this hyper-connected, algorithmically mediated world. Part 2. Algospeak. Algorithms as language editors. And it's precisely this quiet, pervasive shaping of our reality by unseen code that the book Algospeak delves into with such clarity. It doesn't just scratch the surface. It truly captures this profound, often overlooked shift in our communication. What the author makes clear is that these social media algorithms aren't merely ranking posts or suggesting content based on our clicks. They are actively, fundamentally reshaping the very language we use, the words we choose, and how we express ourselves. It's a fascinating, and at times, a little unsettling observation. You see it everywhere once you know what to look for. Take, for instance, the evolution of euphemisms. The book highlights examples like the term unalive to refer to suicide, or the deliberately scrambled spellings like seggs to talk about certain topics that would otherwise trigger content moderation filters. As someone who's worked on systems that employ natural language processing, I understand the underlying logic. These algorithms are designed to identify and filter out content deemed harmful or inappropriate based on specific keywords and patterns. But what the book so brilliantly illustrates is the unintended consequence of this automated gatekeeping. It forces creators who rely on these platforms for their livelihoods or for connecting with their communities to become incredibly agile and inventive in their speech. They develop new ways to talk about sensitive subjects, crafting an entirely new lexicon just to navigate the digital landscape. It's a kind of modern-day linguistic acrobatics. My kids, who spend a fair bit of time on these platforms, are often the first to introduce me to these new terms. They'll casually drop a word that sounds perfectly normal in context, but when you dig a little deeper, you realize it's a workaround, a linguistic shortcut that's evolved out of necessity. It makes you realize that the internet isn't just a place where we talk. It's actively teaching us how to talk, as much to the machines that govern these spaces as to the actual people on the other side of the screen. And this phenomenon is far from trivial. It's changing more than just slang or niche internet terminology. The book posits that this Algospeak seeps into mainstream consciousness, subtly influencing the way we think, the way we write, and ultimately, how we connect with each other. If we're constantly self-censoring or rephrasing our thoughts to appease an algorithm, are we truly expressing ourselves authentically? Are we losing nuance in our language, flattening the rich tapestry of human expression for the sake of digital visibility, or avoiding a shadow ban? It reminds me of those moments at work when you're writing a report or an email, and you find yourself picking certain keywords because you know they'll resonate with a particular stakeholder, or get past a filter in the internal communication system. It's a micro-level version of what Algospeak describes on a macro scale. We're all, in various ways, becoming attuned to the preferences of the unseen digital gatekeepers. The book is not just a study of internet slang. It's a deep dive into how our digital environments are subtly but profoundly altering the very fabric of human communication. It asks us to consider the long-term implications of a world where our words are constantly being evaluated, not just by other humans, but by code designed to sort, filter, and amplify. It challenges us to reflect on what we gain, and perhaps more importantly, what we might lose when algorithms become our silent co-authors. Part 3. Algorithms. Our silent language editors, one of the most striking insights from Algospeak, and one that really resonates with my own experience, is the idea of algorithms acting as these silent, omnipresent editors. Think about it. Every social media platform, every search engine, has moderation systems in place. These systems aren't just there to catch outright violations. They're constantly scanning, analyzing, and making decisions about which words get seen, which phrases get amplified, and which ones get quietly sidelined or even suppressed. It's like having an invisible red pen hovering over every word you type, not correcting your grammar, but judging its algorithmic acceptability. The book vividly illustrates how content creators, particularly those who rely on these platforms for their income or their voice, become incredibly adept at navigating these unseen rules. They learn, often through trial and error, that certain words will trigger a filter, lead to demonetization, or reduce their content's reach. So they invent substitutes. The examples the book gives, like unalive to refer to death, or using the corn emoji to allude to pornography, aren't just clever slang. They're survival strategies. They are linguistic workarounds designed to bypass the algorithmic gatekeepers and ensure their message, however coded, still gets through to their human audience. This constant negotiation with the algorithm changes the very structure of our lexicon. It's a fascinating, if a little disorienting process to watch unfold. It made me reflect on what Epictetus once talked about, the distinction between what is within our control and what is not. He wasn't talking about social media algorithms, of course, but the principle applies beautifully here. Whether a platform's algorithm decides to hide a certain word or boost another, whether it flags content or lets it sail through unimpeded, these are external events. They are not, in the grand scheme of things, within our direct control. We can't command the algorithm to behave differently. What we can choose, however, is our response to this reality. Do we get swept up in the chase for algorithmic approval, contorting our language to fit the machine's preferences, potentially losing clarity, authenticity, or nuance in the process? Or do we strive to maintain our integrity, our commitment to clear and honest communication, even if it means our message might not always achieve the widest possible reach? It's a real dilemma for creators, a practical struggle between visibility and values. As a dad, I see this dynamic play out on a smaller, more personal scale. My child often comes home with new slang or phrases he's picked up from his friends or online videos. Some of it I barely recognize, or it feels jarringly out of place. I can't stop the flow of new words and cultural references that he's exposed to every day. That's outside my control. The digital world, with its rapid-fire linguistic evolution, is a force of nature in his life. But what I can control is how I react. I can choose to engage calmly, to ask what the words mean, to understand their context, and to explain, honestly and openly, the nuances of language and why certain words might carry different weight or meaning in different situations. I can guide him to think critically about the language he consumes and produces, rather than just passively adopting whatever is trending. I can't edit his world, but I can help him navigate it with a thoughtful mind and an authentic voice. It's about choosing to stand firm on clarity and integrity, even when the currents of digital communication pull strongly in other directions. It's about being mindful of our own speech and encouraging others to be, not just for the benefit of human understanding, but for the sake of our own intellectual and emotional well-being. Part 4, the accelerated evolution of language. Building on that idea of algorithms as invisible editors, Algospeak also sheds light on another truly fascinating and somewhat alarming aspect: the sheer speed at which our language is now evolving. Historically, when cultures developed new forms of coded communication or euphemisms, it was a process that unfolded over centuries, sometimes even millennia. Think about something like the Christian fish symbol, for instance, used by early Christians to identify themselves discreetly during times of persecution. That symbol and its meaning spread through generations, slowly embedding itself into a community. Or consider how literary euphemisms for sensitive topics would gradually enter the vernacular over many decades, passed down through printed works and spoken tradition. What the book highlights is that in our current digital landscape, what once took centuries now happens in weeks, or even days. Viral slang, new coded terms, specific emoji usages, they leap across borders, both geographical and cultural, almost overnight. A phrase born in a niche online community can become mainstream parlance within a single news cycle, amplified by algorithms that prioritize novelty and engagement. It's like putting language evolution on fast forward, an accelerated, almost dizzying pace of change that leaves many of us, especially those of us not constantly immersed in online youth culture, feeling a step behind. This rapid-fire linguistic churn, driven by the need to bypass filters or simply to stay relevant, creates a kind of linguistic fog. It made me think of Marcus Aurelius, who, in his meditations, constantly urged himself to keep his judgment clear and unclouded, to see things as they truly are in the present moment, stripped of all external adornment or distortion. He advocated for simplicity, for directness, for understanding the essence of things. The speed of Algospeak, however, tends to tempt us in the opposite direction. It encourages confusion, promotes half-truths, and often rewards ambiguity or sensationalism. When language shifts so quickly, when meanings become fluid and dependent on context that itself is constantly changing, it becomes incredibly difficult to maintain that stoic clarity, to hold on to a simple, unadorned understanding of what's being communicated. Stoicism, in this context, nudges us to resist the urge to be swept along by every linguistic current, to instead stay grounded in principles of clarity and simplicity. It's a call to pause, to question, and to seek genuine understanding, rather than passively accepting the latest trend. I see this dynamic play out in my own work, surprisingly enough. In the world of software development, there's a constant churn of new coding frameworks, new tools, new buzzwords. Every few months, it seems, there's a new best way to do things. A new approach that promises to be faster, more efficient, more scalable. And I've definitely fallen into the trap myself, chasing the latest shiny new framework just because it was fashionable, or because everyone else was talking about it. The initial excitement often gives way to messy projects, increased complexity, and ultimately, less robust, harder to maintain code. The pursuit of novelty, for novelty's sake, rarely leads to lasting value. It's the same, I've come to realize, for language. Chasing every new piece of internet slang or every algorithmic hack often leaves us with more noise than meaning. It can erode the precision of our communication, making it harder to convey complex thoughts or genuine emotions. When we prioritize algorithmic visibility over human clarity, we risk losing the very essence of what makes language such a powerful tool for connection and understanding. It's a subtle but significant distinction, and one that Algospeak compels us to consider seriously. Are we building bridges of communication, or are we inadvertently constructing walls of fleeting, coded expressions that ultimately fragment us? Part 5. Authenticity versus algorithmic optimization. So we've talked about how algorithms act as silent editors, subtly shaping our words, and how this process has put language evolution into hyperdrive, compressing centuries of change into mere weeks. But what is the true cost of this constant optimization, this relentless effort to speak as much to machines as to people? This is where Algospeak really makes you pause and consider the deeper implications. The book argues that by continually optimizing every phrase, every sentence, every visual element for algorithmic survival, for those coveted clicks, shares, and views, we risk trading something truly invaluable, our authenticity. It's a subtle erosion, like grains of sand being constantly buffeted away. When the primary goal becomes algorithmic visibility, the natural impulse to express complex, nuanced, or even unpopular truths can be stifled. Why bother crafting a deeply reflective thought if the algorithm won't understand it? Or worse, will bury it because it doesn't fit a trending pattern. This leads to a fragmentation of attention, where content is often simplified, sensationalized, or distilled into easily digestible, highly shareable snippets. Nuance is the first casualty, as anything that requires sustained thought or careful consideration gets passed over for the quick, punchy, algorithm-friendly headline. We also see this tendency to push extremes. Algorithms are often designed to maximize engagement, and unfortunately, controversy, outrage, or highly polarized opinions tend to generate more engagement than reasoned, moderate discourse. So, language naturally drifts towards the edges, towards the most provocative interpretations, because that's what gets amplified. And in this environment, the rich diversity of human speech, with all its regionalisms, its unique expressions, its subtle humor, begins to feel threatened. It's not just about losing old words, it's about losing the space for genuine, unconstrained expression. This whole dynamic, this constant pressure to perform for the algorithm, brought to mind the Stoic concept of amor fati, which is often translated as love of fate, or love of what is. It's about accepting the reality of our circumstances, embracing what's outside our control, not with resignation, but with a robust understanding that our power lies in our response. We cannot, as individuals, simply switch off the algorithms or halt the relentless march of technological influence on language. That is the fate of our current era. But what we can do, what lies firmly within our control, is how we choose to engage with language, how we maintain our virtues of clarity, honesty, and integrity within that reality. We can choose to practice virtue, even when the external system incentivizes the opposite. Maybe we can't stop slang from mutating at a dizzying pace. We can't prevent new coded words from emerging to bypass filters. But we can decide that our personal use of language will be governed by a different set of priorities, by a desire to truly connect, to genuinely communicate, and to foster understanding, rather than merely to trend or to gain clicks. It's about intentionally choosing to use language as a bridge, not just a tool for optimization. I find this principle particularly grounding when I'm home, especially at the dinner table. After a day spent at work, often wrestling with complex technical jargon or trying to articulate solutions in the most efficient way possible, coming home is a reset. When I sit down with my family and my son is animatedly telling me about his day, or my wife is sharing a challenge she faced, I make a conscious effort to slow down. I listen, and I use plain words. There's no algorithm to please here, no engagement metric to hit. It's just us, trying to understand each other. And in those moments, that connection feels profoundly real, authentic, and deeply satisfying. No linguistic hacks, no coded speech, no algorithmic amplification required. Just clear, honest, human conversation. It's a powerful reminder that while the digital world offers immense reach, the deepest, most meaningful connections often come from the simplest, most unfiltered exchanges. Part 6. Language, a window to the soul. All this talk about algorithms editing our language, about the accelerated pace of linguistic change, and the subtle, often unseen, pressure to optimize our words for machines rather than for genuine human connection, it really makes you reflect on the deeper purpose of language itself. Beyond simply conveying information, what is our language truly meant to do? What does it reveal about us? It reminds me of something Seneca, the old Stoic philosopher, once wrote. He suggested that our language, the way we speak and express ourselves, ultimately reveals the soul of a man. It's not just about the words themselves, but the intention, the clarity, the character that shines through them. If our words are chosen for a machine, for a filter, for a trend, then what does that say about the soul behind them? What does it reveal about our values, our priorities, our very nature? If algorithms push us towards coded speech, towards these linguistic workarounds, then the Stoic challenge becomes incredibly clear. It's about keeping our soul unhidden. It's about ensuring that our words continue to reflect clarity, honesty, and an authentic intention to connect, rather than being driven by fear of suppression or the relentless chase for algorithmic approval. Think about it. When we resort to euphemisms or coded language, there's an underlying fear, a fear of being censored, a fear of being overlooked, a fear of not being seen or heard in a crowded digital space. And while these fears are, in many ways, very real and economically motivated for content creators, a Stoic perspective asks us to examine that fear. It asks us if we are allowing external pressures, things outside our control, to dictate our internal state and consequently our outward expression. The Stoics were all about living in accordance with reason and virtue. And for them, clear and honest communication was a cornerstone of a virtuous life. It wasn't about being loud or attention-grabbing, but about being truthful, coherent, and purposeful in one's speech. When we find ourselves twisting our words or inventing new ones simply to appease an algorithm, are we truly living up to that ideal? Are we choosing the path of clarity and virtue, or are we allowing external forces to make us compromise the integrity of our expression? This isn't to say that all slang or linguistic evolution is inherently bad. Language has always changed, adapted, and grown. But the distinction Algospeak highlights is the driver of that change. Is it organic human creativity, born of a need to express new ideas or solidify cultural bonds? Or is it a reactive scramble, a linguistic contortion born of algorithmic pressure? The Stoic message here is one of self-possession. It's a quiet but firm reminder to guard our inner citadel, and part of that guard involves our words. It's about consciously choosing to let our speech be an extension of our authentic self, reflecting our thoughts and values with directness, rather than letting it be a mirror reflecting the demands of a machine. It's about striving for a language that serves humanity, that builds understanding, that resonates with truth, even when the digital currents around us are pulling us in directions that favor performance over sincerity. It means pausing before we type or before we speak and asking ourselves, am I saying this because it's true, because it's clear, because it serves a good purpose, or am I saying it because I think an algorithm will like it more? This reflection isn't about shaming anyone for adapting, but about empowering us to be intentional. It's about reclaiming a small but significant piece of our autonomy in a world that often feels designed to dictate our every digital move. It's about ensuring that our language remains a clear window to our soul, rather than a blurred, coded reflection of an algorithm's preferences. It's a constant, quiet effort, but one that, from a Stoic standpoint, deeply contributes to our sense of integrity and inner peace. Part 7. A practical step. Noticing our words. So, with all this in mind, the subtle algorithmic editing, the breakneck speed of language evolution, and the potential cost to our authenticity, what's a practical step we can take, something tangible in our daily lives? It's easy to feel overwhelmed by these vast, invisible systems. But what might help, I've found, is simply becoming more aware. It's about noticing. When you catch yourself in the act of bending your words, shaping a phrase, or even picking a specific emoji not because it's the most accurate or genuine expression of what you mean, but because you anticipate how an algorithm might react, that's the moment to pause. It's in those quiet instances that we can ask ourselves a simple yet profound question. Am I still speaking to humans, or am I primarily speaking to machines? This isn't a judgment, but an observation. And it's a question that can apply to so many facets of our modern communication. It could be while you're crafting a professional email, deliberately using certain buzzwords you think will grab a manager's attention, even if they obscure the actual point. It might be when you're writing a comment online, self-censoring, or exaggerating a viewpoint, because you know it'll get more likes or shares. Or perhaps, in a more personal context, when you're texting a friend, choosing an acronym or a popular phrase you don't fully embody, just to keep up. The act of noticing itself is powerful because it brings consciousness to an often unconscious process. It's like stepping back from the river of constant digital input and seeing the currents for what they are, rather than just being swept along. And once you notice, once you ask that question, the choice presents itself. Do you continue to optimize, to cater to the invisible gatekeeper, or do you gently steer back towards honest, direct human communication? Sometimes the small act of choosing honesty over optimization, of valuing clarity and genuine connection above algorithmic reach, is itself a profound act of resilience. In a world that often rewards performance and viral trends, choosing to speak from a place of integrity, even if it means fewer eyeballs or less digital applause, is a quiet rebellion. It's an assertion of your own agency, a declaration that your internal compass, guided by values like truth and clarity, matters more than external validation. This aligns deeply with the Stoic ideal of focusing on what's within our control, our judgments, our intentions, our character, rather than being tossed about by external outcomes. We cannot control the algorithms, but we can control our choice of words, our intent behind them, and our commitment to using language as a tool for connection, not just for clicks. For me, this often comes up in my work. There's always pressure to make project updates sound impactful, to use certain metrics or phrases that resonate with leadership. But I've learned that truly effective communication isn't about jargon bingo. It's about clear, simple explanations that genuinely inform and build understanding. When I catch myself about to add an unnecessary buzzword, I ask, am I doing this to sound smarter or to be clearer? And often, choosing the clearer, simpler path, even if it feels less impressive to an imaginary algorithm, leads to better outcomes and a stronger sense of my own professional integrity. It's a small internal win. It's about recognizing that language, at its best, is a bridge between minds, a means to share our inner world with another. When we let algorithms dictate our speech, that bridge can become convoluted, unstable, or even crumble under the weight of optimization. By consciously choosing clear, authentic words, we strengthen those bridges, both in our personal and professional lives, and we reinforce our own commitment to meaningful interaction. Part 8. Beyond Algospeak: Language, Creativity, and the Engines of Surveillance. If Algospeak has sparked your curiosity, as it certainly did mine, and you find yourself looking at your phone a little differently, or hearing conversations with a newfound awareness of linguistic shifts, there are a couple of other books that might deepen your understanding of this modern digital landscape. They approach the subject from different angles, but all touch upon the profound ways our technological environment is shaping who we are and how we communicate. One that immediately comes to mind is Gretchen McCulloch's Because Internet: Understanding the New Rules of Language. While Algospeak focuses specifically on the algorithmic pressures, Because Internet takes a broader, more linguistic view of how the internet has fundamentally changed the way we write and speak. McCulloch, who is a brilliant linguist, explores everything from emoji usage to the evolution of memes, explaining the grammar of online communication in a way that is both insightful and incredibly accessible. She unpacks how different generations have adopted and adapted internet language, and how these new digital dialects are influencing our offline speech. It's less about the why of algorithmic control and more about the how of human creativity meeting digital constraints, often with fascinating and unexpected results. If Algospeak felt like peering behind the curtain at the machine's influence, then Because Internet feels like walking through the bustling, evolving marketplace of human speech on the internet. It helps you appreciate the sheer inventiveness and sometimes the oddness of how we choose to express ourselves in this constantly connected world. Reading it after Algospeak provides a really rich contrast, highlighting the push and pull between the structured forces of algorithms and the organic, often chaotic evolution of human language. You can see the patterns that emerge, the reasons why certain linguistic shortcuts become popular, and how communication styles shift, not just because of algorithms, but because of the inherent social dynamics of online communities. It's a wonderful companion for anyone fascinated by the sociology of language in the digital age. Then there's Shoshana Zuboff's The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, The Fight for a Human Future at the New Frontier of Power. This book is a much heavier, more academic read, but it provides a crucial foundational understanding of the mechanisms and motivations behind many of the algorithmic behaviors that Algospeak describes. Zuboff dives deep into how the major tech platforms operate, not just by selling products or services, but by collecting vast amounts of data about our behavior, predicting our future actions, and then subtly shaping those actions for profit. It's a compelling and often chilling look at how our attention, our choices, and even our language have become commodities in a new kind of economic system. If Algospeak details the effect on our language, surveillance capitalism explains the engine driving that effect. It helps you understand why platforms are so invested in optimizing for engagement, why certain content is amplified, and why the invisible editing of algorithms exists in the first place. It provides context for the why behind the how. It's a book that truly makes you think about the choices we make every day online and the unseen forces at play behind every scroll and click. Both of these books, in their own ways, expand on the themes in Algospeak, giving you a fuller picture of the complex relationship between technology, human language, and our increasingly digital lives. They are not light reads, but for anyone who finds themselves grappling with the feeling that the internet is subtly directing them, as I often do, they offer a tremendous amount of clarity and insight. They empower you not just to observe these phenomena, but to understand them more deeply, which, as a Stoic would remind us, is the first step towards navigating them with wisdom and intention. They help us to understand the nature of things as they are, rather than merely reacting to the surface-level changes. Part 9. A simple rule for digital communication. After diving into Algospeak and really spending time thinking about how deeply our language is being shaped, nudged, and sometimes even distorted by the algorithms that govern our digital lives, it's easy to feel a bit overwhelmed. The sheer scale of these invisible systems, constantly working, constantly influencing, can make you feel like a small boat in a very big, powerful current. But amidst all these powerful, unseen forces, there's always a core of agency we retain, a quiet power in how we choose to live and, crucially, how we choose to communicate. It comes down to intention. The algorithms are undeniably there. They influence what we see, what gets amplified, and consequently what words we gravitate towards. That's a given, a part of our modern fate, as the Stoics might put it. We can't just wave a magic wand and dismantle them overnight, but we can decide how we relate to them. We can decide what our primary allegiance is when we open our mouths, when we put our fingers to the keyboard, or when we craft a message for any platform. For me, the most potent takeaway, the one I keep returning to, is a simple reminder. Speak to humans first, algorithms second. This isn't a call to ignore the digital world or to pretend these systems don't exist. That would be naive, even foolish. It's an invitation to reprioritize. It's about consciously choosing to orient our communication towards another human being, with all their complexities, their need for clarity, and their capacity for genuine connection, before we consider how a machine might interpret or process our words. Think about the implications of prioritizing a human audience. It means valuing clarity over algorithmic keywords, nuance over sensationalism, and authentic expression over a carefully constructed phrase designed to bypass a filter. It means remembering that behind every screen, there's a person with their own thoughts, feelings, and needs who deserves to be addressed with respect and genuine intent. This echoes the Stoic emphasis on living in accordance with reason and virtue. If our virtue includes honesty, clarity, and building good relationships, then our language should reflect that. We should aim for our words to be a clear window to our soul, as Seneca suggested, rather than a coded message primarily for an automated gatekeeper. In my own daily grind, whether I'm writing a technical specification for a new feature or just a simple update to my team about a project's progress, there's that subtle temptation to use jargon, to make it sound important or optimized for the internal metrics. I've caught myself wanting to use buzzwords, not because they're the clearest way to explain something, but because I think they'll resonate more with a particular manager or make the document seem more professional. But I've learned that the projects that genuinely succeed, the collaborations that truly thrive, are built on plain, clear language. Language that's designed to be understood by another human being, not just to tick boxes for a system or impress an unseen algorithm. When I prioritize clarity for my colleagues, the work flows better and the trust between us deepens. And at home, with my family, the lesson is even more stark, more immediately felt. When my son is trying to explain something from school, or my wife is sharing about her challenging day, if I'm distracted, half listening, or if my responses are just superficial likes or quick, unthinking nods. Essentially, if I'm speaking to an algorithm of polite, minimal interaction, the connection isn't truly there. It's only when I fully engage, when I speak with intention and listen with genuine presence, that real understanding and warmth bloom. No algorithm can mediate that. No amount of optimization can replace the simple, direct act of one human being truly communicating with another. This isn't about being perfect. It's about constant effort and intention. It's a daily practice, a small act of quiet resistance against the pressures of the digital age. It's about remembering who we're ultimately trying to reach and why. It's about valuing genuine connection over algorithmic amplification, truth over fleeting trends, and the substance of human interaction over the superficiality of digital metrics. It's about making a conscious choice to let our humanity lead our words. Part 10, Closing Thoughts and What's Next. So as we bring our thoughts on Algospeak to a close for today, reflecting on how much of our everyday language is being subtly yet powerfully shaped by the unseen hand of algorithms, that single margin note really sticks with me. Speak to humans first, algorithms second. It's a simple idea, almost deceptively so, but it carries a weight of intentionality that feels increasingly vital in our constantly connected world. It's about remembering that the ultimate purpose of language is connection, understanding, and the sharing of our inner worlds, not merely the optimization of our visibility. It's a quiet reminder to choose clarity, authenticity, and empathy as the guiding principles for our words, even when the digital currents are pulling us in other directions. It's an ongoing practice, a daily commitment to ensuring our words build bridges rather than just bounce off screens. This particular journey through Algospeak has really underscored for me the profound, almost philosophical implications of how we choose our words and how external forces can shape those choices. It's made me think deeply about the hidden philosophies embedded within our communication and how even the simplest phrases can reveal so much about what we value, what we fear, and how we navigate the world around us. And that idea, that even the seemingly mundane aspects of our language carry these deeper, often unspoken layers of meaning, is actually a perfect segue into what we'll explore in our next episode. We'll be turning our attention to a very different kind of book, one that might at first seem far removed from the digital realm, but which, in its own way, delves deeply into the hidden philosophies of language. We'll be looking at The Headache, a fascinating exploration of how we talk about pain, how we articulate suffering, and how the very words we choose to describe our discomfort can shape our experience of it. It's a powerful reminder that even the most personal and visceral experiences are filtered through the lens of language, and that the ways we talk about pain, and indeed about suffering in general, carry their own hidden philosophies, much like the coded speech of the internet. If this reflection on Algospeak has resonated with you, if it's given you pause or made you look at your own digital interactions a little differently, I'd genuinely love for you to stay connected and continue these conversations with us. Taking a moment to like this episode or sharing it with someone you think might appreciate these reflections truly helps to bring more thoughtful discussions into this space. And of course, if the ideas we've touched upon from the book itself have intrigued you, if you want to dive deeper into the world of language shaped by algorithms and understand the nuances that we could only scratch the surface of today, then I'd highly recommend picking up a copy of Algospeak. Supporting the author allows them to continue their vital work, and it provides you with an even richer, more detailed understanding of these subtle but powerful shifts in our communication. It's a book that has certainly changed the way I think about my own code and the words I use, both at work and at home. So I invite you to join us next time as we explore the language of pain. And until then, keep those margin notes close at hand.